Hi everyone, my name is Connie Lovelace, and I am a independent hobbyist who enjoys learning and talking about library music. Today I'm joined here today by a really special, influential person in the library music industry. He's composed many works, and he founded one of the biggest library music companies probably in the world. And it's really an honor to speak with him today. Could you please introduce yourself?
Well, I'm Gerhard Narholz, composer, publisher, and conductor and producer. And I'm happy to talk to you and say hello to you and to everybody who may see this.
All right, awesome. I'm glad that you're here today. It's really a pleasure to speak with you today, Mr. Naholtz. I was never honestly expecting that I would even get to have this chance, but it truly is an honor.
Well, don't mention it that way. I'm happy to talk to you, and I tell you, nobody ever asked me to make an interview like that. I'm a person who likes to be in the background. I don't like to be in the open too much. But this is the first, maybe, and the only one I'm doing. So let's do it.
All right, awesome. All right, so with that out of the way, let's just get started. I'm gonna ask a variety of questions relating to your work and your life and some miscellaneous questions here and there.
Okay.
So, I suppose it would be fitting to start with your life. So if you would, I'm interested in learning more about your early life and your upbringing, if that's all right.
It is helpful for me if you talk rather slowly, not too fast, in order to understand everything that you say.
Okay.
If you ask for my past, for the very past, for my early years, uh, it's easy to um, tell. My father was not a musician. He had a little factory and produced pottery, little ashtrays and vases and similar stuff. But I didn't want to go this way. But he was a wise man and told me, um, if you wish to go to music, you have to learn a proper profession first. And so I did. I started to become a teacher. And after graduation, I went to the Munich, not to the Viennese Music Academy to study classical composing. But even during my study of becoming a teacher, I wrote songs. I started as a songwriter, and in the late 50s, yes, and early 60s, I had a couple of hit songs in Germany, of German uh, pop songs, which didn't make it to other countries really, but they were number ones in Germany. And some really renowned singers were singing it. I was never singing and I was never playing anything because my piano playing is too poor. I didn't like to practice. So I only practiced the absolute minimum when I was very young. My father, who was very musical, played the zither, played the guitar, and he made me practice the piano. Yes, sometimes he sat next to me and played with his guitar with me in order to simply simply make me play the thing. Well, um, this about my very young years. Um, these pop songs uh, helped me to come into the music business and to the film business. Through these pop songs, I got the commission to write music for German cinema films, which were mainly song-based. These were local, of course, local themes, like there were film titles like, well, I only can say Germany, but one was Übermut in Salzkammergut, was die lustigen Weiber von Tirol oder ich kaufe mir lieber einen Tiroler Hut. I also wrote the music to a criminal movie, Das Mädchen von Hong Kong, translated The Girl from Hong Kong. I wrote several sequels of Schulmädchenreport and so on and so on. During the time between 1958 and 64. In 65, I had the idea, or I had the thought, why do I write music for a movie that is, or especially for a television serial? Why do I write music for a television that is aired once, twice, or 3 times, and then it's gone? Why don't we reuse it? And I said, okay, let's try to reuse the music that I have written. I got the right to reuse it from the television producers, and started organizing this music in categories, and that was in 1965. In order to uh, make this available to the professionally available, I founded the company Sonotone together with my wife. I married, and we both founded the company in 65.
All right.
And this was the beginning of the Sonotone Recorded Music Library, which really was based on the fact that I wanted to have my own compositions reused. But very soon, my music was not enough. I needed other composers to join, and so it grew quickly because the demand in those years for background music in Germany was big. We had new big television companies who didn't have music, and they needed the stuff we did. So, well, this about the very early years, but I don't want to kill your questions.
Oh yeah, no. It's completely fine. I'll just ask you what I have. Okay. So so you were introduced to the field of music because your father introduced you to is or did you have like did you ever want to do anything else or was it always just music?
Well, actually, I didn't want to do anything else. No, no. But I started, and I learned music, or while I was studying it for the teaching. I of course learned music, and I learned to play the bass, the upright bass, and learned some piano, and wrote music. Yes, started writing music very early, but I never had the intention to become a classical composer. My favorite music was always jazz. And when I was a young boy, I remember me sitting in front of the radio in Austria, Europe, where all this new swing music, where the swing music was quite new after the war, and listen to the Voice of America and the American television radio stations who played wonderful music. And my favorite bands have been Stan the Man Kenton, they called him, a great big band at this time. And so I grew up with jazz music, and this is my favorite field.
All right. That's really great to hear. Um so So you mentioned that you learn how to play piano and bass, though you said that your piano skills, you didn't practice them often. Is
No,
there is there any other instruments that you ended up
no,
learning?
no.
No, just
My
piano and
whole
bass.
life I only was writing and let others play.
All right, that's good to
Yeah.
know. All right, and so I have to ask, what outside influences affected your compositions? I know you mentioned that you were always into jazz, but I'm just curious.
I didn't understand the question. Could you repeat it for me, please?
Yes, sorry. What outside influences affected your compositions?
What outside of?
Outside inspirations.
Well, I don't know. I'm inspired all the time. Or probably I don't need inspiration. I sit down and write what I have to write.
Okay. All right, awesome.
Yeah, I don't wait for inspirations. If there's music that needs to be written, I sit down and I do it.
All right. And what would you say the most challenging aspect of composing is?
Oh, this is a hard question. My composing was always uh, purpose oriented, which is not the really artistical kind of doing it, because usually composers first want to uh, produce something or write something that is unique and is and so on and so on. But I'm just uh, my now let me say it. Let me help me in English. My thinking of composing is always who may use it and what for am I writing it, and then I write it.
All right. That's a really good answer. All right. So when you were practicing or studying music in the Academy of Vienna, did you end up studying with anybody notable?
I don't think so. No,
Don't think so.
no, I
Okay.
wouldn't know. No,
All right.
probably not in America. Maybe one or the other of my colleagues became famous in Austria and Germany. I don't know.
All right. All right. So, okay. So I noticed that on some Sonaton and Intersound music albums, you were credited for some of the photos on the covers. Was photography at all another field that you were interested in?
Yes, very much. I'm a very visual person, and I loved in these years when it was possible to uh, present a photograph in the size of a long playing album. This was a challenge to really do great big pictures, and I purchased a Hasselblad camera, which is a very fine camera, a very fine photo apparat, and did all kinds of experiments when photographing as well as I did in the music. I did a lot of experiments when composing and producing, and so did I in with the photographs and used them on album covers, which were beautiful for me. But uh, when the LPs have died and the CDs came on, the pictures became so slow, so this was not that uh, that interesting for me anymore to do pictures for this little format.
All right, that's quite interesting to learn. Okay, so you and your wife founded Sonaton in 1965. So
Yes.
I'm curious how you two actually ended up meeting and collaborating on getting Sonaton off the ground.
Well, the story how I met my wife is a long one, and that dates back to uh, 50, 57, 58. But we really did not date. We knew ourselves, we knew each other, and we wrote postcards. So I wrote a Christmas cards, and my wife Heidi wrote back Happy Easter or so. And coincidentally, she happened to be in Munich and met me. This was 62, I think, or even 63. I can't remember. And that was it. And 65, we married.
All right, that's great. And your three sons, Robert, Gregor, and Christoph, they've also composed music, most
Yes,
notably.
they do. Gregor does it professionally. Christoph and Robert are composing now or then because Robert is different, completely goes into a different direction. He is a producer of documentary movies, documentary films. And my son Christoph is a philosopher. He is teaching philosophy at the University of Munich. So these are different directions, but one can do music always, even if it's not the main profession.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. And were they as enthusiastic about music as you were when they were growing up?
Well, our house was full of music their whole life, so they couldn't escape. and, and my son Gregor, who is now composer, he started composing at a very early age when other children at the age of 10 or 12 or up to 14 were reading novels in bed. He sat in bed and wrote scores or or studied scores from Beethoven or Mozart and looked how they have written their things. And he was from the very, very early age in the middle of the music, and he is the really talent in our family. He's the really talent. And he is great. He writes great music, symphonic music, and great film music.
That's great. Has your wife composed with you as well?
Now and then she has an idea and sings it to me, and I write it down
All right, that's
sometimes.
awesome. And nowadays, what do you find enjoyable to do in your free time?
Well, I sit in the garden and look at the clouds because I don't have much free time yet. Uh, I'm retired, so-called retired uh, from my obligations as a CEO from Sonotone since 2 years now. We got a new CEO, but I'm still full-time working, not for the responsibilities I had before, but in the music department, there's a lot to do, which I'm still working with.
All right, so does that mean you still compose tracks at all?
Yeah, sure, yeah. Composer never starts composing.
That's really
It's not a
awesome.
matter of age.
It's really awesome to hear. Um, are there um are there any memories that you look back on fondly today?
Excuse me, looking back to what?
Is there any memories that you look back fondly today?
Fondly. Well, I'm
Yes.
looking back
Yes.
fondly to my whole life. I'm happy all my life.
That's really
Absolutely.
that's awesome. All right, so now we'll get into questions more about your work in Sonaton. So I'll just ask you, w- what was your first job that you ended up having?
Now you're frozen. Can you still hear me? Oh,
Yeah.
now you're back.
Uh,
You have been frozen. I'm sorry.
oh yeah, no worries. So I was just inquiring, what was the first job that you ended up getting when you were younger?
Well, I never had any job. I always was self-employed and decided what I do. I never had any job. No.
Okay. All right. And then so I'm just curious, what was the publishing and composing landscape like for you in before the founding of Sonaton?
Well, before Sonotone was founded, of course, I had to publish my pop songs with German publishers, other ones, yeah. Of course, everybody had a publisher or has a publisher these days, in the old days as well. They have published my songs, yes.
Okay, awesome. And So what was your experience like working with commercial record labels such as Telefunken?
Well, I worked as a producer for various German labels, for Telefunken, for Polydor, for Decca, and produced a number of LP records. I also produced for uh, Japanese companies like King Records in Tokyo or Polydor Tokyo, produced LP records for them. Uh, that's the normal producer's life.
All right, good to
Yeah.
hear. All right. So I just have a question about the Magic Strings series of LPs. I was curious how those LPs came about.
The Magic Strings are based in Tokyo. Once I got a commission, and it was in the late 60s, early 70s, got a commission by King Records Tokyo. They said, produce for me a string orchestra that is bigger than any other string orchestra that are around, such as Stanley Black or Paul Moriarty or Percy Faith. Produce a real big string sound. And as all these great orchestras have been around already, I thought, what shall I do? And the answer was, use two string orchestras instead of one. So I had two big string sections sitting there, and I arranged them in a kind of way that they were interacting or playing together, playing apart. And if you listen to Candler records, you will hear it. And this was the time when stereo was rather young. And so it was fun to use all the possibilities that stereo gave. That means there's something coming from the left hand, going to the right, and the string line going from right to left or up or down. And this was fun. And we also did a lot of experiments with the early synthesizers that were available at that time. At the Moog synthesizers, we used a lot, and did also a lot of technical tricks. Like if you have the chance to listen to my recording of My Sweet Lord, where the violins and the whole orchestra does a kind of wah-wah effect. The whole strings do wah-wah, which was never done before. And you know how we did it? We played a string line
Mhm.
through that pedal thing that the guitar players use for their wah-wah effect. And so we made the strings talk. It's
Wow.
just one example for funny things that we did. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah, that sounds like quite the experience. All right. Okay. So sorry. Okay. So I have to ask, during the founding of Sonaton and the start of the company, what were some of the what were some of the struggles that you and your wife faced trying to get the company started?
Well, the general struggle when you start a company is money. You need more money than you earn quickly.
Right.
But we always managed to get the thing done. It was sometimes not easy, but that the returns from my compositions and from everything were always good. But to start a company and run a company needs really investments,
Right.
and we did it. My wife and I, we did it well.
That's awesome. And I in the article that you sent me, the professional production article, it's mentioned in there that your wife she had experience in the tourism industry. Did that help at all with Sonaton?
Well, she helped me all the time very much because she was at the Swiss Air in Vienna and had her whole business life before me. She had lots of contacts with with people and talk to people. And she was a big help for me to, when we had to do small talks or more serious talks, she was always a big help in conversations to me.
All right. And so in that case, did you ever handle much of the business side of things, or was that mostly for your wife?
Could you repeat this, please?
Yes.
Repeat.
Did you ever handle much of the business side of things of Sonaton, or was that mostly your wife?
Well, we have everybody, every one of us has his division. Heidi is taking care of all the technical things, especially when the digital came in and when all the development of computers uh, were going on. Heidi was the one who took care of the computers, learned the computer languages, and we already had a very sophisticated computer system in the offices long before the PCs came up. And then she continued to do all the administration things for me. She she introduced all the new technologies to Sonoton. We have been the first ones to have an online computer search program. And she was the one who stood behind it. And also the following uh, technological developments, she is the one on top of it. While I was taking care, or I'm taking care of the music production, the music, and of course, as a CEO, I had to take care of the financial overview, which
All
I
right.
don't have to do anymore, fortunately. This was the only thing I did not like.
Oh, well, that's very interesting to learn about. So, my next question, throughout your years at Sonaton, you've used a number of pseudonyms quite prolifically, with some of them being Norman Candler, Otto Seiben, John Epping, Zyko, Paul Prenesel, and many more. I'm honestly quite shocked with the amount of pseudonyms, so I have to ask, what was the significance behind each one, if you would?
Well, the initial idea was to connect each word, each name with a certain direction of music. Because I'm writing everything if I need to, uh, all kinds of styles. So I have Renato Begato, for example, who writes the Latin stuff, and Norman Kendler, who writes the strings and romantic music. Otto Sieben writes the more classical stuff, and so on and so on. But during the years, things have been somehow intermixed for various reasons. So it's now a mess. A
Yeah,
mess.
I've looked at some of the album releases and there's just
Absolutely.
it's yeah, it's a big mess.
Yeah,
Um,
but I don't care because I personally I'm not so proud about myself. I don't want to be in the public. You know, I love to work in the background and don't want to be featured.
yeah, that's completely fair position to have. Okay. So so Sonaton had
Excuse me, my telephone. Excuse
oh,
me.
yeah, yeah.
Narholz, die ist da, aber ich habe gerade ein Video-Meeting. Kannst du eine Stunde später anrufen, ja? Danke. Okay, excuse me.
All right, yeah, no worries. That happens. Okay. Um, so Sonaton has many albums from many different cultures and regions. Did you, I know you mentioned Japan, but did you travel to any other countries to study comparative musicology and to learn about local instruments or musical styles?
Well, you may have noticed in Sonotone, we have a label called SAS Sonoton Authentic Series,
Hmm.
where we or I produced the authentic music of far over 100 countries. And to a good part of those, Heidi and myself were traveling there, finding talents, finding the studio to record and produced it there. So we now have a really authentic collection of folk music of very, very many countries, uh, which partly have been produced 20, 30, 40 years ago. So there are documents which could not be reproduced right now, as could not be recorded today this way.
Right. And that actually really reminds me of Gerhard Narholz's albums. He would go across other countries and learn all the instruments and musical styles of each country, and it's just really amazing to hear, honestly.
Yeah, Trader is a really great composer. He composed most of the cinema of the music for the newsreels after the war. Yeah, and we are happy to have quite a number of his recordings he did in these days in the library.
Hmm.
He was a very nice man, and I only met him once.
Oh, oh,
Yes,
oh,
we just worked in correspondence, but it was really an impressive appearance. His his appearance.
you didn't get to. I'm guessing you didn't get to know him that well at all, or did you? Or
Well, only by writing letters and a couple of phone calls. Yes.
all right, that's really interesting to learn. Okay. Um, so did you work with any notable composers during your time at Sonaton?
Well, uh, I don't know how many composers we have right now, but it must be far over 1,000. And well, notable. Huh. I couldn't name yet somebody, but be sure that we have a cross all German uh, film, not all German but of a number of German film composers, and a couple of Americans, of course. We have about 500 composers based in the United States in the catalog. And if you're talking about well-known names, American names, um, I produced with Nelson Riddle, you may know,
Yeah,
the
yeah.
arranger of Frank Sinatra. I produced an album with him and he wrote for us. I produced an album with Billy May,
Mhm.
also arranger of Nelson Riddle, arranger of Frank Sinatra. Xavier Cugat, you remember Xavier Cugat?
Yeah.
The orchestra leader who founded in the 40s the Latin music in America.
Hmm.
He produced an album for us. And just because you're asking for known names.
Yeah. Um, yeah, that's really awesome to hear, actually. Knowing that you've worked with some of the most, well-known orchestras and people in history in the music industry.
Well, it was fun, yes. And it was great to work with such people because you never stop learning.
Yeah,
I learned a lot from these cooperations.
that's awesome. All right. And so I'm just curious, how in the early days of Sonaton, how did you end up attracting different composers to join and start composing for Sonaton?
Well, this was not so easy because it was a new conception nobody knew about the library business. And I may say we have invented the library business in Germany. We really have been the first ones to do this. and composer did not know about. They had to be uh, taught and convinced, but it was rather easy. It was no problem. No.
I can imagine, yeah.
If composers get the chance to write for orchestra, no one would say no.
Yeah. And I don't even have to ask this, but I'm guessing you're proud of what Sonaton has become today.
Well, proud. It Sonotone has developed during the years. It grew and grew and grew. I didn't want to have such a big company as we are now. But during the past 10 years, I'm not the owner of the company anymore. My three sons are the owners. I just did the work for them. And well, I still do. So they are the company owners. And now the CEO, Alex Black, who comes from Sony. He was one of the directors of Sony for library music there. He is now our CEO and does a really good job. And of course, he does things differently to the way I did it and we did it. He's much more organized because Heidi and I, we did it more as we felt we should do it and not as the real strict business people would do it. And he's a little more strictly working. Budget, that's good. And Sonotone is in a very good way with his direction.
That's great to hear. I'm glad that the company's in, good hands at least.
Well, this is always a problem if founders of a company don't have a family member to take over the business. My boys took over the ownership, but not the business. But we're on the right way, also business-wise.
Right, yeah. Okay. So actually this is I didn't add this question to the page, but I'm curious. So sometimes in the library music scene, older tracks get renamed when they're re-released. Is there any reasoning for that? I'm just curious.
Well, let me think about it. We rarely do this, but sometimes in the early years, especially, I were not so aware of the right English expressions, or the work titles did not really match the content or the style of the music. And in such cases, I decided to change the title, to make the title more, that the title should tell more about the contents of the music. Because in the library business, it is important for clients to can tell from the title of a track already what they may hear if they put it on.
All right. And with that being said, do you still think it's important to preserve the original names as well?
Well, they're all in our computer, of course. Yes, of course.
All right.
Yes, they are, of course. Yeah, sure.
All right.
We have an extensive database with all details, of course.
All right. That's great to hear. All right. And so during the early years, the I read in the Unusual Sounds, the Hidden World of Library Music.
Oh, yes, you found the book, yeah?
Yeah, I read the snippet from your page and the Sonaton page. It said that Barry Music served as your international publisher for a couple years. How long was that exactly?
Well, this is another story, our international relationship.
Hmm.
In the early years, I had a sub-publisher in England that was Barry Music and the label Conroy and other labels who sub-published our German productions, put them on albums, and sub-published them to their agents all over the world.
Mhm.
So my music came into the world through this English sub-publisher. That was Barry Music or Conroy. Later, this company was sold. Barry Music was sold to EMI. And then I decided to continue my own thing. And Heidi and I, we founded the Sonotone label. It was a LP, Langspiel, an LP label. And we did our international thing ourselves,
All
made
right.
contracts ourselves, and that's where we are now.
Interesting. And I actually looked at some of the Conroy long play records, and I looked at one of them, and one you were credited for a couple of them after 1974. So I'm curious, did they still serve as your international publisher for a
Well,
little?
we had an agreement that um, we made an agreement a couple of years ago that Conroy may still continue to release and publish a couple of recordings that they had on the labels before. So they are still in hands of EMI. It's now EMI that is owning the label, or Sony. So they are still uh, the sub-publishers of those tracks.
All right, that's great to hear. Interesting. And did you have a working relationship with any other library music companies, such as the German label Color Sound?
Well, Color Sound is a label that I founded together with a colleague, his name was Dr. Gunther Krefenius. We both founded this company. It was I think it was still in the 70s, but no, it must have been in the 80s, yes.
Yeah, the
In
first
the
release.
90s or even in the 20s, we decided to sell this catalog to EMI because my co-owner of the company needed money, and he offered it to me, offered his share to me, but I didn't want to buy my own music, and so we sold it to EMI, and it's now an EMI copyright.
All right,
But it
interesting.
includes a lot of my compositions still, yes.
Oh wow, I didn't know that actually. That's really cool. Okay, so do you have a favorite work that you've composed?
No,
No, you no
no,
favorite work. Okay.
no.
Okay. Um,
This must be over 2,000 pieces. It's hard to say what is favorite.
yeah, I would imagine so.
It's really,
Yeah.
when I write it, every piece is my favorite, of course, while I write it, but then I forget it. I never see it again and never hear it again. But sometimes, in the radio and television, I hear something and think, oh, that sounds somehow familiar. It could be mine. But I don't remember all of them,
All
really.
right. Yeah, some of your tracks have appeared in I'm sure you already know this, but they've appeared in shows like SpongeBob SquarePants and
Well, all my tracks or sonotone tracks uh, appeared through our American agent in a lot of Hollywood productions, in many known Hollywood TV series, uh, films, feature films. I just made here a few words, a few names in case I need it, and I obviously need it. Let me look at my notes.
no worries.
Just to name a few where our music is included: Game of Thrones, Soul, House of Cards, Spider-Man, Riverdale, Lucifer, Venom, The Boys, Tenet, just I just took a few out of hundreds. And the TV series where we included are, I would say, almost, not all, but 70% of American TV series include our music now or then, not the whole music. A track here, a track there. These are series like, let me look at my list: Desperate
Mhm.
Housewives, The Cosby Show, Gilmore Girls, The Simpsons, Ren and Stimpy, Cold Case, Monk, America's Most Wanted, America's Funniest, and so on. X-Files, Criminal Minds, and so on. It's just a list that uh,
Goes
never
on and
ends.
on.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it goes on and on. Yeah.
Okay.
Well, but on the other hand, we are in the business for almost 60 years now, and it adds up during the years.
Hmm. Yeah, I can imagine. Okay, so that mostly covers all the questions I had about Sonaton and your work. So um, this last section is mostly dedicated to miscellaneous questions. Some of these questions were provided by a website called Library Music Themes, which is a place where a lot of people discuss library music and even
Hmm.
collect all those kinds of records.
It's interesting that such a organization is in function. Where is it?
I believe it's American based. I'm not quite sure, but there's people from all kinds of countries that interact there.
Really? That's interesting. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. So with that being said, um, in recent decades, there's been a solid trend of music releases getting louder and louder. It's often dubbed the loudness war or brick walling. Instruments all become the same volume, causing a track to lose dynamic range. So I'm just curious, what are your thoughts on this trend, if you have any?
Every period has its music, and I watched so many different musical styles developing from jazz, soul, and so on and so on, up to the latest uh, hip hop trends. And I accompanied them positively. I would never say this is crap, because every one of such musical styles has extremely good musical, high quality product, and also crap in all styles. So I would say I'm neutral
Neutral.
and um, appreciate any new idea that comes up from wherever it comes.
Yeah, that's a fair position to have. A lot of tracks actually rely on brick walling because the compression gives a good effect that enhances an album.
Yeah, well, the technical quality of productions has naturally has enormously been improved through the years. And when we release now our 70s or 60s old albums, we remaster them, and they suddenly sound brilliant. They sound like recorded today.
That's excellent. And
It's really magic, yeah.
I'm actually curious, how do you decide which songs from the vinyl series ended up on the CD releases and the digital
We
releases?
are working to release everything,
Everything.
but it's not fine. It's not finished yet. Uh, our new CEO is very fond of this old material. He wants to have the old LP series re-released as they were, including the original three pictures. And we're working on that.
That's really exciting to hear. I'm sure a lot of people are going to be excited about that.
Well, yes, we are excited too, because I tell you, those are most of the recordings I haven't listened to for 40 years now, or 50 years. And when I hear it again, I think, oh, was not so bad what we did in those days. Yeah.
All right. So the longtime Sonaton mastering engineer Wolfgang Mayscheider he's worked on a considerable part of Sonatan's materials since until
Oh yes,
around
yeah. Gerhard Fry was the one who started as a very young sound engineer in the 70s and was the engineer for a lot of our productions. But the first one who did most of the very early stuff was a sound engineer. His name was Willy Schmidt. He was the owner of the Trixie Tone Studio. That was a studio in Munich that was very popular in the 60s, 70s, and where I did most of my recordings, uh, which were done in Germany. Of course, I did lots of recordings in other cities, other countries, but the German recordings have mostly been done in this Trixie studio. And this Willy Schmidt was the sound engineer. He was a great sound engineer.
great. And is Wolfgang is he still around actually? Because his last credits
He's still alive, but of course retired. Yes,
retired.
Wolfgang Mehlscheider. Yes, yeah, yeah.
All right, that's
He
that's
was a
great.
really good engineer. Yeah, well, he is a really good engineer.
All right. Um, so I'm curious. You've worked with Manfred Minish under the alias George Winters. Um,
Well, Manfred Mini was a great band leader, and he was the band leader of the Stuttgart Radio, a big band in the 70s. And he was a great arranger for strings. We had Manfred Mini strings recorded with him. They are in the catalog. And he wrote a really Hollywood-like kind of string arrangement style. The harmonies that he used in his string arrangements were really unique, and I liked this very much. And he had one thing that I could never understand how he did it. He sat next to the radio, had the radio full volume. A radio played pop music of that time, and he sat there and wrote his arrangements.
oh
I
wow,
could never understand how he can write an arrangement while the radio next to him plays pop music. He was unique.
that's really awesome. That's really great to hear.
Hmm.
Um, a bit of an odd question, but I'm just curious. Do you have a middle name actually?
Yes, it's Otto.
Otto? All right.
Gerhard Otto now. It's
All
Otto.
right. Great, great. Okay. Um, so I mentioned library, the website, library music themes. How do you feel about people who are the community dedicated to collecting obscure library music releases from over decades ago?
Well, I'm happy to hear that there are people who are collecting this music, because it's wonderful to know that the music is not dead, that is still heard, that is still listened to. And that's one of the reasons why we are really re-releasing the old stuff, because there seems to be a demand now also in the business, in the film business and advertising business for uh, this music of the 60s, 70s. It seems to be used again. This is one of the reasons why our CEO is so keen to get this out. But unfortunately, this is not possible to do it as quickly as he would like to do it, because
Right.
every single track needs to be mastered, and that takes time
Mm-hmm.
by so many thousand titles.
Yeah, definitely. And uh, I kind of forgot what I was gonna ask, but I'll just move on to the next question.
No
Um,
problem. Maybe it comes back.
okay. Um, so what's your favorite music format actually?
Well, I think I mentioned that I'm a jazz lover. If you ask me which music I like, it's jazz music. but I like any kind of music. I don't say I don't like this music, but uh, or that. But I'm a jazz man, and if you ask me what I like, that's the big bands.
That's great to hear. I was actually though I was actually referring to like format like CD, tape, or vinyl. Like, do you have a favorite?
Oh, I understand. Yeah. Well, at home, I'm playing Frank Sinatra albums from vinyl. My wife loves Frank Sinatra, and we hear Frank Sinatra quite often because also for me, his arrangements are the best that has ever been done in live music.
I agree,
I
definitely.
loved it, and we played from vinyl. Yes.
All right, awesome. And oh, I had my thought back. Personally, I really adore library music. I really think that the amount of creativity that you get with being in a library music label as opposed to a more commercial record, it gives you a lot of creative freedom. You can just make mu whatever music that you want, I guess.
Well, this is one of the real nice things, as you mentioned. Yes, you have realized that in library music, people can really compose. Of course, targeted for a special purpose or a special in a special style, but they can compose what they like to and what comes into their minds. And this is nice. It's really good. Yeah.
All right, awesome. And the last question that I have is, um, surely you have a lot more stories about your life and work to tell. I'm just curious, have you ever considered writing a biography about your life?
No, because my stories are I don't have real stories. I'm always working for so I was always working more or less in the background and attached to my works that needed to be written, to the business decisions to be made. Uh, I wouldn't know which stories I could write in a book. I don't think there are many.
All right. Um, well, that was the I think you answered pretty much all that I had on the document. So
Good.
that was the last question, so I guess we're done.
Okay. Well, it was very nice to talk to you and very
Yeah.
nice that you are interested in my music and uh, care about what's in libraries. This
Yeah,
is
I
really great, and this is a really wonderful hobby that you have.
thank you.
May I ask a personal question? What is your profession? What are you doing for for your uh, work?
Um, right now I'm mostly just making videos as a hobby. I haven't really gotten anything notable out yet, but I'm working on it, I suppose.
Well, as I see it, you would be a good presenter for television shows.
Oh, that really means a lot to me.
Hmm.
Thank you.
Well, you should uh, look into this direction. I think you are talented.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. I can't express my gratitude. All
Okay.
right. Yeah, I guess that's it. It was really an honor to speak with you today, Mr. Narholz.
Well, it was very nice to talk to you. And please don't forget to send me the copy of this
Of course,
when it's done.
once
When
it's
it's
done processing, I'll send you a Google Drive link and you'll have it.
yes, please. Good. Okay. Shall we say goodbye?
All right. Yeah. Um, goodbye.
Goodbye
Salutations.
and auf Wiedersehen.
Auf Wiedersehen.
Take care.
You too.
And
You have a good rest of your evening.
absolutely. You too.